be here, and today I want to talk to you about RX Vega. Now I want to share my thoughts, my opinion, and all around what I think will happen with these cards, not a card, but these cards. I just want to throw my thoughts against the wall. I don't have any benchmarks, not even of other people. We're gonna wait till way later, maybe. We might just put the nail in the coffin today. I don't know. But what I want to talk about is what's going on over at AMD. One of the things is I want to talk about is what is RX Vega, because AMD has decided in their grand wisdom that they were actually going to reinvent the name again. So it's not a 4-digit name that is preset by HD. It's not a RX 200 or 300 series. It's not a Fury. It's not a 400 or 500 or 600. It is just RX Vega. That's all it is. And I'm going to give my thoughts on that and why I think it is. They went with this naming. And just my speculation. I suspect since they came out with this card right before NVIDIA launched their next line of cards, I expect they want to come out with what they had. And so they're like, no, let's just call it Vega. We only have like 2 real cards, and we just have a version that is water cooled. Let's just call it Vega, and we'll just make it like the Fury cards. And it'll just be like a top-end card just to shoehorn in there. And it'll be what it is, and then we'll just throw it out there, and we'll just take what we have, we'll put it out there, and we'll see if we can make money with it to recoup our losses from R&D, and then we'll move on and just start researching and designing our next full line of cards. That's what I think they really did. Now, honestly, if it was me, I don't know what I would name it, because you already had a 580. But I guess you could have called. I guess I would have named it like RX 590, and then you have 590X or 599. You know, something like that. But I guess 599 would indicate it'd be dual GPU, so that would be that. Anyway, it's really confusing. When I first heard Vega, when I first heard about all the different Vega cards, I originally thought they were all going to be workstation cards. That's how confusing it was to me. But no, it's not that. So okay, whatever. You know, move along. So, from my understanding, you initially just have the Vega 56 and the Vega 64. Vega 56 is supposed to contend with the 1070. The Vega 64 is supposed to contend with the 1080. The Vega 56 actually contends performance-wise really well with the 1070. It actually does. The Vega 64 just nips at the heel at the 1080, but the 1080 always stays about 10 or so frames beyond, 10 or 15 frames beyond Vega 64. You can adjust with that. Now, that sounds good, right? That doesn't sound bad. No, that sounds really good, because you can just round it down and then say, it's more or less a lesser 1080, because Vega 64 will obviously beat a 1070, right? Okay, yeah, way more power than 1070, and the Vega 56 obviously beats the 1070. So in most cases, or it ties. So it's actually really competitive. It's really nice, and it has HBM2, 8 gigs. So that's really nice. It's actually improved what the Fury tried to do, which is use HBM, which was good, but only gave you 4 gigs. So I never liked that. So I was going to buy a Fury back in the day. I decided not to because it only had the 4 gigs. So But this has 8 gigs, so it'd be more than enough, and I love that. So, kudos to that. Now there's 2 things that really bother me with this. Number one, let's talk about the power draw. Now, the TDP for the Vega 64, the highest one I can see, and this is for the water-cooled version, is 350. The air-cooled one, the highest one is 290. So I'm just going to roughly say around 300 and so watts TDP, roughly. But let's just go worst case scenario and go 350 watt TDP. I'm just going to tell you that just take that as the worst case scenario. Measure twice, cut once. Go on the side of caution. Now, we'll come back to that in a second. Now, Vegas 56, its TDP, the highest is a TDP of about 210 watts. Okay, that sounds fairly reasonable. Take that with a grain of salt. But we're going to come back to this, and I'm going to explain. I couldn't find much in the way of stress tests and power draw and people that were really pushing this limit to see what was the worst case scenario and what was the average case scenario. Because when I look at cars with the power draw, what I want to know is what is the worst case scenario? Like, if you really just turn everything to full throttle and you're totally reckless, what does it maximum draw? That's what I want to know. That's something you should never ever run into. And then I want to know everything's stocked. What's the worst case scenario if you just run everything stocked and everything is just open and the car can just do what it wants to do? Average, normal, average, just straight up gaming. That's what I want to know. And for the Vega 64, the maximum power draw was just right under 400 watts. And the maximum gaming stress was around 300 watts, give or take. So, granted, to get those maximum draws, stress tests, you're doing some voodoo black magic. So, you should never ever run into that. But that's the worst case scenario. Vega 56, I take that with a grain of salt because I had to look under some not very credible sources to try to get some kind of number. And what I actually ended up with was something that was maximum stress test gaming. So I don't even think they really pushed the board to the limit. Was around 250 watts, between 240 and 250 watt maximum stress. Now, if Vega 64 goes up to around 400 watts, I find it very hard to believe that Vega 56 isn't going to be closer to 300 watts. So I would take that with a huge grain of salt, and if you're going to buy into this card, I would go with the side of caution and go with a little bit more power with the power supply if you're going to buy this card. Because that TDP sound and water draw sounds a little bit too good. Now, here's the thing. Here's kind of the weird thing. Power draw, okay. Vega 64, power hungry card. Nobody gonna lie. Nobody gonna argue with you. Okay, cool. Got no issue with that. Alright. Well, I have a little bit of issue with it because of where it ends up sitting. But okay, whatever. It's around, when you're just gaming, doing everything, it's around 300 watt card. Okay, we've seen this before. We've been there. Alright. Hell, I'm kind of running that now in my system already. Okay, whatever. I I would like better efficiency, but eh. But don't know, whatever. And the Vega 56 sounds pretty decent for what it is. Decent performance, not terrible efficiency compared to the older brother card. Sounds pretty good, right? Well, here's the part that's gonna really kick you in the gonads. Vega 64 formerly was $500. Now currently on the market, due to some weird things going on in the market that I don't quite understand why, is now selling for $599. So around $600 for Vega 64 that doesn't even beat the 1080, which there are 1080s available for a little bit over $500. What? So, if you're very confused by that, join me because I'm also very confused. There's a card with less efficiency, doesn't even match the performance, and uses way more power, and it costs more. You lose in almost every front, except for maybe a few little gimmicks and bells and whistles that we'll talk a bit at the end of this in a second, in my verdicts. On the other hand, and this is weird, this is very weird, RX Vega 56 isn't released yet. It'll release sometime at the end of this month, I think on the 28th. I think is what I saw the release date was supposed to be. So the launch market price was supposed to be around $400, which is close. It's actually $50 less than what the market price is supposed to be on the 1070. Okay, it kind of beats it or ties with it. It does fares better than its older brother. So okay, fine. So it does decently against the 1070. Its power consumption is not. I would like it to be better, but it's not terrible, especially compared to older AMD cards. So okay, it has a lot to offer as far as HBM 8K, so it looks really good. But to be totally honest with you, I'm gonna be a sucker here. I would like to see the RX Vega sell for like 370, or if AMD can make a profit, I would like to see them sell for $350. Because I know as soon as the aftermarket heat sinks go on, it's going to go up by around $20 to $50. So if they lower it by $50, I know the aftermarket heat sink is going to raise it back up to $400. I would like to see that. Whether or not we're going to see it, probably not. We're probably going to see it lower by $20 as the new NVIDIA cards come out. And then, depending on how much faster those are, it might lower another $5 to $10 after that. But remember, you're also going to increase the price about $20 to $50 for the aftermarket heat sinks from the third-party cards too. That's around about what things kind of happen, how things kind of go with. So, all in all, it's not a bad card. It does contend with the 1070 very nicely. It's a thing. I can't praise it like, oh yay, because it's not a 1070 killer. It's just a contender. It just kind of does the same thing the 1070 does, just differently. That's all it is. And it's just slightly cheaper, but the slightly cheaper option is a blower style fan going up against a non-reference style 1070. Because you can get the non-retro style 1070 with better cooling, takes less wattage, and does around the same kind of performance, except for, like I said with the Vega 64, there's a couple bells and whistles that might sway you back over to Vega, which is very weird. So, since I keep teasing that, let me talk about that. There's a couple things that AMD has in their pocket that are not super huge. They're not huge, but they could persuade you one way or the other. Which is either if you want a FreeSync monitor that is way cheaper than a G-Sync monitor, this is a way to get more performance than a 580, 570, 480, 470, whatever AMD card you've been rocking because you want FreeSync. Also, if for some reason these AMD cards age well like wine, or they end up doing something, some kind of like API better than NVIDIA, because we've seen it in the past, and they just blow up in performance-wise, then there's that. But apart from that, there's not a lot of difference here. I gotta say, there's reasons to buy the Vega 56. There are reasons. It's not terrible, and the power, I would like to see the power consumption be better, but it's not horrible. On the other hand, the Vega 64, at the new current price of this video, that we have currently learned that it is right now at retailers, as they are sold out even. Starting price is $599 at around $600. This card, the Vega 64, is just, I cannot find a reason why you would want it. It makes all the more sense to just pick up a 1080, unless you just hate NVIDIA, unless you just refuse to get a 1080. It makes every sense in the world just to buy that card instead of the Vega 64. If you want that level of performance. Just straight up. Because the Vega 64 uses way more power, does not perform as well, and is way more expensive. So this is a very confusing launch, or the start of a very confusing launch, and I'll be interested to see what happens in the future. But as it is right now, I'm very confused. I don't know what to think. It's completely 1A from AMD's Ryzen launch, where they did almost everything right, with the exception of didn't give board partners enough time to iron out all the kinks, so they kind of had to work with it, and that kind of ruined a little bit of not real reputation, but it may have turned a couple people off in sales and whatnot, but they got that worked out, and that's fine, and Ryzen's doing good, and that Ryzen pretty much didn't do a whole lot wrong other than that. Vega, I can't even.